Hi, welcome again to Off the Page. I'm Leslie Choice, and my guest today is Tom Forrestall. Tom's an artist who lives in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and he creates paintings that are seen on walls in Canada and throughout the world, actually. He also keeps journals. He has over 200 journals where he takes notes and makes sketches and all this sort of thing before he creates the art itself. So today we'd like to talk about this relationship between journal writing and art. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the show.
Leslie, thank you. Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, pleasure
now,
to be here.
I've seen these journals. There's a big pile of them there in your house, and you really do a lot of writing. What's that primary connection between the journal writing and the art that you create?
Well, I think the connection is probably indirect. It's more that something filtered through the mind, and I think it's a painting and the writing and the drawing and so on is all kind of a mind thing for me. And while if you went through the notebooks, you would see direct connections with drawings and sketches and writing and so on with specific paintings, but for the most part, they kind of go along independent of each other. They each have a life of their own in a strange way, and I feel that life very much in the notebooks or in the paintings or in the sketches.
It's a bit of a gymnasium, I guess. I think that was your term from before. You're kind of working out before you do the final polished.
Well, you do, and every morning I kind of work out with these notebooks, almost like muscle building or something in my head. And you know, I can draw and write for a couple of hours every morning, and then I sort of reach a point where I say, that's enough of that, and I hurl them aside and run upstairs.
Now, is that work or is that just fooling around?
Ah, well, there you are. My wife, Natalie, would tell me it's a lot of play all the way through, yeah. But it's very, well, it's a passion. So what's a passion? Is a passion enjoyable, or is it some sort of sickness that has creeped over you? It's a necessity. And I get a lot out of it, and I learn a lot from it. And I glean, I would say the drawing and the writing. The writing clarifies the vision somehow or other for me. It feeds the vision on another plane. And so enjoyable, yes, it is. You know.
What's the actual content of the words? Are you sitting there writing, like sort of talking in your head about what you're about to paint, or is it something different?
It generally relates to the current things I'm working on. For instance, right now I've sort of moved in the painting and moved away from a rather chock full, cluttered to the rafters, right to the very edge painting, to a very minimal, empty sort of paintings with a lot of space in them. And now I'm writing about that and minimalism and so on. While it's nothing new in the art world, it's new. It is quite new for me. So it's a whole new experience, and it's the personal voyage you take that's vital.
So through the writing and through the artwork, you don't like to just stay on the straight and narrow. This has worked for me before, so I'm going to do it again and again and again. Every once in a while, you
well, that is a vicious trap to fall into. You must never know how to do it. Every painting I start, I don't know how to do it, and you don't want to have a formula. You don't want to fall into doing something you know how to do.
It's got to be a mystery there?
Oh yeah, the mystery is always built into it because I don't understand the things myself entirely. And you know, Coleridge said about poetry that, you know, you enjoy it more when you don't quite understand it all. And it's the same with a painting. There's something about a painting, I presume writing too, that if you don't quite get it all, you'll get more out of it. There's something there, it triggers the mind. So
that is fascinating, and I think that probably takes you a bit deeper into subject area. You're looking for the surprises and the unexpected to happen. If it was too predictable, it would take the fun out of it. If not,
well, it does creep in without you hardly knowing it, because people will come and say, well, you know, what might have been quite logical to me seems illogical to the viewer in a way. What's that doing there? You know, why spoons, or why this, that, or the other? Yeah. The other thing.
Let's take you back a bit, back to your roots. You've written about this, of course, in your journals, and it appears in your painting, the Annapolis Valley. You say that it's the source of reference for you.
Well, it is, and I think this is not uncommon for most of us, you know, that you dig into what you knew probably many years ago, and somehow or other the sweet and sour of growing up, you know, and being as a child, things really get impressed on your mind.
What are those images? What kind of images?
Well, I would say there's certainly images of living in a smaller town and living near a graveyard. We lived right beside a huge cemetery. And so graveyards were never a scary place. They were quite captivating, quite interesting, and often we would go to a lot of the funerals, stand way back and watch the spectacle, and then later perhaps help the old grave digger throw the sand. As a matter of fact, later on I worked in the graveyard there, working summers, digging graves and planting
You were a grave
flowers.
digger?
I was a grave digger.
This was digging by hand with a shovel?
Oh yeah, it was all by shovel in those days, yes.
Lots of rocks?
Yeah.
No, not too bad in the Annapolis Valley.
So there was good sides and bad sides to it, you know, whether it was picking potato bugs or blueberries or whatever. And you know, there was good sides and bad sides. It wasn't just all bucolic and comforting and so on. There were... So I would say these things you draw on all the time as you go along through life, and no matter where I went, if I saw an apple tree in Italy or somewhere, it was really an apple tree in the Annapolis Valley I was looking at.
Yes. You've written in your journals too about having had epilepsy when you were a child and how that shaped you in many ways as an artist. Maybe you could talk about that a bit. Well,
something like epilepsy will focus the mind. You know, it certainly matures you very quickly. It brings you to, you might say, to your senses. There's no time to dream. And very early in life, I decided that I was going to, you know, keep on top of this thing somehow or other. It certainly was a battle, and in a strange way there is a sweet and love-hate relationship with epilepsy that I have. It doesn't seem to bother me too much now, but that's, I suppose, keeping on top of it. It's certainly, I would say, epilepsy, one of the principal reasons I'm a painter today, working independently for myself.
How did that happen? What was that?
Well, of course, I always painted. I don't know why. I just gravitated to drawing and painting, as youngsters do anyway, and I never really left me. And, you know, all through school and high school and so on, I painted and drew and just got into it more and more and more. It kind of gripped me, and there was certainly a weird sort of single-mindedness about it all, excluding everything else, studies and a lot
How
of
many
other
paintings have you done in your life? You're a prolific person.
They go on and on. I would say, I don't know, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I'd have to ask Natalie, perhaps she'd have a better count.
Are you happier when you're painting, when you're working, than when you're not?
Oh yes, and I think this would apply to all creative people. It's the process that you do it for. It's not actually the conclusion is always a disappointment. So the only reward is really the process, the creative process. Because I work mainly from what I would call a vision of something. You have a vision, and when I'm putting these things together, and even in the notebooks and so on, you develop a vision which is something of some strange perfection, which is on a magnitude beyond you, and you don't quite understand it. It has such an ideal, as I say, perfection about it, that you couldn't possibly reach in reality. Of course, reality is something less than perfection.
Would you be disappointed if you reached that point of perfection?
Well, I'd be amazed, I guess. Well, yes. I don't think I ever do. What you do reach is the best you can do. And this is where you come face to face with self. And I think this is vital to any artist or any creative person, that you do come face to face with yourself. Lots of people will do it better. More people perhaps couldn't do it as well. But you've done the best you can, and you can stand back, and you're disappointed that this vision that you had in your mind's eye for this particular painting, what you did with your hands, you couldn't hold it in your hands. The vision you cannot hold it in your hand.
Now, this is starting to sound almost metaphysical or spiritual. Is there a quality of the metaphysic, of some spiritual dimension?
Well, I'm sure there is. Yes, there is, and it comes into me through my art and creativity. And I believe the vision, in a way, is as close as I'll ever get on earth to the hand of God. In a way, it's a kind of a glimpse of it, albeit in a rather distant sort of way.
And it's you making that connection.
Yes, it's me making that connection, yeah. It's a deliberate one, but something, you know, that I'll never be able to touch. But I can strive for it. reach for it, or this is the whole idea is always to reach and reach and reach and then fail.
And then fail. You keep coming back to that, which it always seems like a funny term to me, because you create a beautiful painting, a wonderful work of art, and then you say, well, I did pretty good, I got close, but I didn't quite get there.
No, they're all kind of a miserable failure, all of them. They look all right to other people. The only success about them, and this is why you wouldn't get depressed over this failing, is that I did the absolute best I could. Mm-hmm. I pushed it to the limit, you might say.
Do you write about that in your notebooks?
I do. I talk a lot about that because I try to unravel it, but there's no unraveling it. It's just one of those things that it actually just gets bigger and bigger.
How have those notebooks changed over the years?
I would say they became more focused. They were rather useless sort of things at first. I mean, going right back to diaries, which were the boring. I've got stacks of diaries that were boring and dull and led nowhere. And then I got into notebooks that I drew, and then I started making little drawings or writings and so on, which led nowhere either. And then gradually it did become more focused on what I was doing and why I was doing it, to the exclusion of anything, anything personal, you know, grocery list or something like that in there. There's no room for that.
What do you do with them once they're done? Do you lug them around with you? Do you go back and reminisce?
Well,
back in every once in a while?
I do dig through them because there are a lot of good ideas that I got going with for a while and left. And I'll often do that. There's hundreds and hundreds more ideas in the notebooks than I'll ever be able to paint. And they're sometimes just brief little sketches or little writing or little few words or something like that. So I do go back over them. Indeed, I was going back through one yesterday from 1995, and there were some wonderful little drawings there. I'd started of fingers holding grains of sand or something, and something about a twig. I was interested in it then, and so 4.5 years later, suddenly flipping through them, it picked up on it again, you see. So there'll be something come out of that, I'm sure, whereas at the time it just kind of fizzled out and I went on with something else. If you don't seize the vision and kind of bring it to some sort of a conclusion in a painting, the painting is interesting because it's the definitive thing. You say, well, I've enough of this drawing, enough of this sketching, enough of this writing. We're going to tackle the final thing and get it out of my head. Well, of course, it doesn't quite leave my head, but you do come face to face with yourself in the painting in that sense. A drawing, you can avoid your failings and so on, because you can say, well, I'll do some more drawings. The beautiful thing about the notebooks is you can fail, and I do, left, right, and center, and they're quite glaring. Whereas in the paintings, while they fail me, somehow or other, the viewer, or if you want to call them the general public, or whatever it happens to be, expect the artist never to fail in the final painting. He can fail anywhere else, but in the final painting he must succeed.
You've had lots of time to try and get it right.
Well, that's right. Yeah, so you get it right as best you can.
Yeah.
And you have to leave it at that, otherwise drive you nuts. And then you move on to something else.
Those notebooks, and then of course your paintings too, are full of details. And maybe that's where the details become focused as you're working in the notebooks. With the final painting, which is more important to you, the details or the concept?
Well, I would say they're both work together, of course. The concept is something I think the concept comes first because it's an overall thing, and then you kind of finish it off with the detail. The details are very important because they trigger kind of the emotional connection, but they all have to be knitted together into the totality, the total.
Is a painting supposed to have a meaning? I remember those English teachers that I had from way back trying to tell me, well, this is this short story. What it really means is this.
Yes.
Does a painting work at all that way?
Well, there's symbolism in it, and there's personal symbolism, and I suppose public symbolism. You know, people have ideas. I don't know, one crow sorrow or something like that, which everybody might know about a bit, and then there's kind of just personal symbolism, you know, what an apple tree might mean to me, or what something else. So I suppose each thing I do has some meaning for me. Now that's not to say the viewer will not have some other meaning for it, and will, of course. They can't unravel what I'm thinking entirely, and that's good, and that's where the mystery kind of creeps in. What a apple tree or something might mean to me, or what it might mean to someone else, or who knows, a fire hydrant or anything.
That's right. It all can be symbolic.
That's
and every
right.
Viewer would add their interpretation.
That's right, and sometimes it's a little out of whack, and the combination and the things that you bring that are, you might say, brought in, juxtaposed with these things, can create all sorts of mysteries, and the whole thing is very tangled and brought together, and certainly for the viewer it can be a total mystery, of course.
Okay, so let's hang on to that mystery, and we're going to take a short break and be back with Tom Forrestall right after this. Welcome back to Off the Page. My guest today is Tom Forrestall, and I've been reading through some of his notebook excerpts that were published in the Pottersfield portfolio. I see issues of identity that you speak about, commercialism as well. Is there some problem there for you as an artist or any artist between being successful for yourself and successful for the world?
Yeah, I think in a way you have to, I think any artist, no matter what they do, you know, whether they're a writer or a painter or a dancer or whatever, have to, I think they have to watch this commercialism because it can invade you in a strange sort of way. And I think this is one of the things you do as an artist. You take it on for better or for worse. It's like marrying, you know, it's like getting married. You do it for better or for worse. You're linked with this thing for life. You may do well, you may not do well. That's not the point. And in an odd sort of way, money doesn't enter into it at all. Money is such a lesser.
You're not up there in your loft doing this painting. Oh boy, this one's going to bring in a lot of money.
No, that's the last thing on earth that you're thinking about, and it would be deadly if it was, because then what you're doing is you're painting for a market. You say, oh well, so and so wants this, or the market is hot for this, that, or the other thing. Now, occasionally people come and say, well, you know, here's a commission to paint a portrait, or here's a commission to do this, that, or the other thing. And they'll have very specific things they want to do. That, I believe, is just part of the training you do. But in a way, even though they come and say, well, here's, you know, X dollars to paint my poodle sitting on a pink cushion or something, you still set the dollars aside, and you do the damnedest, do your best, yes, to create a work of art of the little dog sitting on the cushion. And so the money doesn't even enter it then.
Right. Do you have some advice for people who are trying to be creative, especially advice related to this journal writing? There is a method there to that can be adapted by any individual who's a visual artist, a filmmaker, a writer, even, all those sorts of things.
Well, I suppose for a student or somebody coming, just starting out, well, of course, the greatest thing which applies universally is to find that person in this world that you love and that loves you. And somehow or other you settle down and you nurture that love. And as best you can. It's a rocky road, has ups and downs, but so what? And you nurture that love, and it's amazing how the rest of it does go very smoothly. Now, as far as directly going, I would say for a young painter or something, advice, well, I think you want to just start off in your own backyard and exhibit them, as I once used to do, on the lawn in front of the old house in Middleton. And if people stop, I used to sell them for 50 cents and maybe $1 if they were particularly large. And of course, people still stopped and complained about the price. They thought the price was very high. And this is what I would say to anyone. You start in your own backyard, and fine, when you graduate from that, you'll go to Halifax, and you'll go to Nova Scotia, and you'll go to the Maritimes, and you'll go to Canada, and then you'll go to the world. And you just
keep your head down and
well, that's
keep
it.
going.
And it will, and of course, you've got to produce the work. You can't be a dreamer. There is a practical side of it that you do have to go to the studio, go up there, close the door. It's a very lonely trade because nobody can help you. Natalie can come up and or Francis or anyone can come up and suggest, and sometimes they have some good ideas. They go, you know, Tom, you've got this cross-eyed here or something, or this is way off, or that's crooked or something. And of course I can see that and I can fix it up. But generally speaking, you're all by yourself. And creativity it can be a very lonely, as you well know, a lonely business, and you just have to buckle to it. But there is that passion that drives you to it. It rivets you to it. It holds you in there and drives me up every day, every morning. I can go up 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock, whatever time after I've finished drawing, and go at it for 8 or 9 hours.
And you create order out of the chaos. You refer to it as ordered excess.
Yes, well, the world is chaotic.
Yeah.
And anything I do, no matter how real they look, they don't, thank God, look like a photograph. I'm not interested in that kind of, because photographs are just a record of chaos, no matter how well it's organized. No matter how well you line the books and the cups up on this table and take a picture of it, you still are making a record of chaos. The artist does not make a record of chaos. He brings order to it. So every brush stroke, considering the way I paint, is weighed and considered.
Is that a form of meditation? I mean,
well, there is that, yes. Yeah, very much so, because
there.
You do drift off, and you do, whether it be Zen or one of these sort of things where you come, you know, you can be working on a rock or somebody's nose or an ear or something and become an ear. Literally, you become an ear. You get inside an ear or inside a rock or a tree or something, and you become that. I don't know why that, and you're drifting. You're right. I'm right off my chair there. You don't feel your feet, all you feel is your mind, your eye, and your hand, and the tip of that brush.
Well, that's a kind of a privilege, isn't it? That the artist gets to live all those experiences. Mm-hmm. How do ordinary people build some of that back into their lives? It has something to do with the creation of art, but also a lot more to do with perception too, doesn't it?
Yes, well, I think you do have to, I suppose the artist has that single-mindedness. You know, see, nothing is important to me than to paint. As I mentioned, my love and so on, and family are that vital aspect. But after that, there's nothing else. I have no, painting is everything. All day, the last thing at night I can do is be doing some writing or drawing or something, or reading an art book or some darn thing. But it relates directly to the creative process. Now, for the average person, I think they have to make sure that if they want to have a bit of that, certainly the viewer sees things differently than the artist does. And, well, that's the way it has to be. But I think they can by maybe, you know, we have the century past has been an awful century because all it did was make us go faster and faster.
Yes.
And it cluttered more and more and more into our lives when we should have been emptying it out and well, stopping to smell the flowers. I think people do have a you know, they have that sense to, as I say, smell the flowers or see something that delights them. I think they have to mull over the things that do delight them.
And of course, that's the job of the painter, to be able to provide that. We're going to take a short break right now. We'll be right back to say goodbye to Tom Forrestall after this. And you've been watching Off the Page today. My guest has been Tom Forrestall. Tom, thanks very much for coming into the studio and allowing us into your home as well.
Well, it's been a great pleasure, Leslie. Great pleasure.
Thanks for watching the show, and I'll see you again next time.